ESPN hockey analyst into the conversation. Barry, it seems like, as we talk about a lot at this time, another Flyers season cutting short. Normally it's in the playoffs. This year they are not a playoff team. And for you, what is the shortcomings of this particular Flyers bunch?
Well, the funny thing about this Flyers team is they were very good against good teams and very bad against bad teams. They seem to beat all the teams that were fighting for a playoff spot, and then they'd play Carolina and get beat, or they'd play Toronto and get beat, or Buffalo, or teams that were really struggling. That seemed to happen all the time with Philly. They got some great players. They've got a lot of skill. They've stockpiled some good draft picks this season, so they should be able to get some more good young players into the fold. Obviously, missing the playoffs is something that's not acceptable to a team that spends the cap every year. But they got to decide now what to keep, what to get rid of, what they need to replace, what is good. So Philadelphia's going to have a busy offseason, certainly deciding where to spend the money. Is there guys we want to buy out, or are there other things to happen? So it's going to be a busy summer for the Flyers.
Barry, this is a really unique situation in Philly, I think, with the young forwards on this team, and then they got a lot of aging defensemen, but they do have young defenders in the minor leagues right now that could be coming up to help them soon. Ron Hextall has talked a lot about being patient. Do you think that Hextall and this Flyers team just need to kind of sit it out and wait for those defenders to get ready and then pair them up with a lot of these younger forwards who will then be in their primes?
Well, I heard you talking. Philly doesn't wait. Obviously, they got some good young defensemen. Shane Gostisbehere, it's a shame he got hurt. That kid's got a world of talent. They got some other good young defensemen. But I can't see the Flyers sitting there and will accept missing the playoffs for 2 or 3 years in a row while these young guys develop. So, I think what they'll want to do is, make some deals. If there's some good defensemen available out there, is there some good free agents available out there, things like that. But I don't see the Flyers accepting being a non-playoff team for 2 or 3 years while they rebuild.
Barry Melrose with us, talking Flyers here, ESPN's hockey analyst. Steve Mason, a lot of times we talk Flyers, Barry, we're asking you about the goaltending problems. Have they solved that issue?
Well, he's been, he's been good. The team in front of him defensively is not great, so, once you get to a point where you have 6 good NHL defensemen and some good veteran forwards, will he even be better? A lot of times, playing goal for Philadelphia Flyers, you see a lot of 2-on-1s, a lot of 3-on-2s, a lot of outnumbered chances. So overall, I think Mason has proved that he is a legitimate number one. And maybe, finally the Flyers have got a goaltender they can depend on for a number of years because as the team gets better in front of him, he should get better in net. So I think the goaltending riddle or problem or whatever it is, is solved for the moment for the Philadelphia Flyers. They've got other pressing needs, probably more so than goaltending.
Solved for the moment, as you said. Mason hurt early in the year, just 26 years old, so hopefully he can get a full injury-free season next year and really show us who he is. How about the top of this roster, where a lot of people are very, in Philadelphia, the Flyers can almost do no wrong. I mean, the Flyers fans are very passionate, but Claude Giroux has been here for a while. Jake Voracek, those two guys, probably upper-tier players on this team. Braden Shen, Couturier, Wayne Simmons. Do you think that the Flyers might need to shake some of those guys up? It seems like they've gone, 3-4 years with those guys with not a lot of deep playoff runs.
Well, what is a problem is some of those guys are going backwards. Like Couturier, it seems like his best year was his first year. And he's sort of been fighting to regain that composure and that style of play that he had early in his career. Reed was such a great young player. They're all okay, but they haven't raised the bar. They haven't, all of a sudden become 25, 30 goal scorers. They've got a lot of good young players. You're waiting for Shen. We thought Shen would be a 35 goal scorer. Simmons has been great. The one guy that was good from the start of the season to the end is Simmons. That guy gives you an honest effort every night. Scores a ton of goals. Giroux is great. Voracek had a career year. But they need some other guys to pick it up also. They need some other guys to get better and better. They need some depth on the third and fourth lines, and they got to get some quality defensemen, some guys that are dependable, some guys that can move the puck, some guys that can join the rush, some guys that are good in their own end. I really think they need more defensive help than forward help. I think they've got a pretty good core of 6 or 7 forwards that you can build on. They got to find a way to increase that defense level, that where you've got 3, 4 good defensemen, 5 and 6 are dependable. Guys can block shots, guys that can create a little offense, run a good power play, things like that.
Barry Melrose with us, ESPN's NHL hockey analyst. You mentioned earlier, Barry, that this team was competitive against the playoff teams, but not very good against the non-playoff teams. What do you read into that? Does that tell you that this team had the talent to make the playoffs and be a playoff team when you see how successful they were against many of the playoff teams?
Yeah, it tells you that they are, when they play to their utmost and they play with passion, they play with energy, and they're maybe a little scared of their opposition, that they play really well. Look what they've done against Pittsburgh. I know Pittsburgh isn't the Edmonton Oilers of the 70s, but you still got Crosby, Malkin, and a bunch of great players, and Philadelphia owns Pittsburgh. So you tell me you can beat Pittsburgh 4 times and you're not dominating Toronto or Arizona, Carolina, teams like that. So I think that it does show that team is something to it. They just got to, compete every night and be ready to play against, the best players and best teams in the NHL and not take the poorer teams or the lesser pointed teams lightly.
Barry, Ron Hextall is the new GM here, and obviously the Flyers have kept it in the family for most of their existence. Now, he went to L.A. and then came here. What is the talk around hockey about Hextall as a GM? Do people like what he has done with this team in the short time he's been here?
Yeah, very well respected. Obviously, in L.A., he was part of those teams, drafted a lot of those kids that came into L.A., ran the minor league team in Manchester a lot. So, yeah, Ronnie's very well respected. I think everyone thinks that Ronnie Hextall will do a good job in Philadelphia. And I think you got to give him some time. Rome wasn't built in a day, and it's hard to do things in today's NHL with players having no trades and no movement clauses, things like that, salary cap issues. So, Ronnie's got a plan, I'm sure, and he's got a style of team that he wants to build. I think the Flyer fans have to give him that amount of time, or the ownership has to give him that amount of time to do the things that he wants to do.
Yeah, let me ask your opinion on if you're in Ron Hextall's head right now, how are you playing the Vinny Lecavalier situation? I mean, obviously it's been a failure, and how do you handle that moving forward?
Well, Vinny played for me in Tampa. Great talent. It hasn't worked out in Philadelphia. But the question is, how do you fix it? Do you trade him? He's probably got a no movement, so there's only a few teams he can go to. You buy him out, things like that. So, or do you, decide, the 1 year isn't a fair assessment. We want Vinny back to next year. So, it's hard to move players to make a lot of money now. It's hard to do things with players to make a lot of money now. It's better for players. So, that'll be interesting what Ronnie does with Vinny.
What about Berube? I know they've changed coaches here a lot, and many of the local beat writers think that he's probably gone. Is that fair? I know he was here most of last year, I think all but 3 games, and then another year this year. I mean, obviously you were a guy who didn't get a lot of time in your job in Tampa there. They made a quick decision there. They made a quick decision here last year. But do you think making a decision on the coach is fair?
It's what we do. Don't become a coach if you're scared of being fired, because it's going to happen to you. And, Craig knows that. Craig did a great job last year. For whatever reason, it didn't work this year. But the coach is going to take the heat. It's not going to be the players that take the heat. Most times the general manager has longer shelf life than the coach. So, getting into business, that's part of it. You can't feel sorry for yourself. You take the good days when they're there, and you accept the bad days when they come. So I'm sure that's how Craig will handle it. He'll accept whatever they do graciously and like a professional. And if they keep him, he'll do a great job next year. And if they fire him, he'll thank the Flyers for what they've done for him and move on.
There's no doubt. Now, when you look at their roster, do you look at the coach and say that was a playoff roster, that's not a good job?
Well, are the Boston Bruins a playoff roster? They're not going to make the playoffs, it doesn't look like. There's a lot of good teams that are going to miss the playoffs in today's NHL because of the parity and everything else is going on. So, like I said, you watch them for a few games. Yeah, they're a playoff roster. You watch them another time, you wonder how they ever won a game. They do have a lot of stars. They do have a lot of people that have played very well in the NHL, but for the most part, no, they weren't a good team this year.
Barry Melrose is with us, ESPN's NHL hockey analyst, and obviously we're looking a lot at the Flyers, who have their final game tomorrow at 12:30. They take on Ottawa to kind of close out the season there. And Ottawa with a very strong season. Philadelphia struggling along to the finish, but they've played well down the stretch here when they haven't had that pressure. What is to you? You mentioned the defense, and we said they do have a lot of young defenders coming up. But what would you like to see them really target this particular offseason that maybe could make the difference in them being where they are right now and then possibly being a playoff team next year?
Skating ability. You have to be able to skate in today's NHL. That's why a kid like Shane Gostisbehere, I thought was such a good fit for the Flyers. This kid is just an unbelievable skater. Not very big, not very heavy, but the guy can just fly, and that's the type of defenseman you need. You got to get lucky. To get some big guys back there. Also, you certainly need your physical presence on defense, but you got to have those defensemen that can skate. You got to have the guys that can be aggressive because they're not scared of getting in a foot race. Philly's got a lot of defensemen, and I was that type of defenseman that you can't really be aggressive because you just can't catch anybody, and you can't put yourself in a position of getting in a foot race. You need those defensemen that can be aggressive, can stand up, because they're not scared of catching guys. You got Erik Karlsson in Ottawa. The guy's fearless because he knows he can catch just about every forward in the NHL if he makes a mistake. Drew Doughty's the same thing. He can be aggressive at the blue line because he can catch guys. Those are the type of defensemen that you need now in today's NHL. The big 6'5", 240 guys, 240-pound guys that are tough to play against, but that get turned around in the neutral zone and chasing all night long. Their days are numbered. You just can't have those guys in your lineup anymore. You got to have the guys fleet of foot that can skate, and hopefully, you can find the odd 6'4", 6'5" guy that can skate, and then all of a sudden you got a Shea Weber, and all of a sudden you got a guy that is challenging for the Norris Trophy every year.
Yeah, and it's funny because it looks like Brandon Manning could be back next year, and then you put him with Luke Schenn, Nick Grossman, Nick Schultz. They kind of describe a lot of the guys that you say that are not really a great fit in this league anymore.
Yeah, I hate to see it because those guys are all the character guys, and they play hard and they play with passion, and the fans love them because they play so hard. But you can't have a lot of those guys in your lineup because you look at the NHL now, you look at the rules, you look at the no hooking, the no holding, you look at the no interference. You can't have defensemen that can't turn around and catch those loose pucks and catch those forwards and beat the forwards out of the zone. So. The big, tough, physical defensemen that can't skate, they're coming the way of the dinosaur. They're going to be gone.
Last one for you, Barry. In the NBA, we hear tank a lot because we know the draft. How has the NHL draft changed and kind of progressed to where teams are utilizing the draft much more than we heard of as fans maybe 5 to 10 years ago?
First off, no player will ever tank. No NHL player in a lineup is going to give you less than 100%. So it's not the players that tank. That's I don't know if people get the wrong impression. What happens is lineups can be maneuvered to be not as good. All of a sudden, a guy that might be need a surgery at the end of the year, they'll give him a surgery in March instead of waiting until the end of the year. Guys that are beat up a little bit that could easily play, you'll say, no, you take the night off. I'll bring this young defenseman up from the American League. So it's the lineups that are tweaked. That's how organizations change the way the team is and can end up losing some games in a row because of a very young lineup. And really, if I'm a team that's going to miss the playoffs, and I know I'm going to miss the playoffs, I'm trying to do that. I'm doing the Frozen Four right now in Boston. Jack Eichel last night, I think he got 3 points. He was the best player on the ice. If I'm Carolina or I'm Toronto or I'm Buffalo, I'm crazy not to be trying to get this guy because I can change my team around in 1 year. You look what Crosby and Malkin did in Pittsburgh. You look what Ovechkin did in Washington. You look what Taves and Kane did in Chicago. that it can change your team around. And if you're an organization, you're nuts not to try and get one of those great young players.
We'll see what happens. Obviously, the Flyers finishing out their season tomorrow against the Ottawa Senators, and then the NHL playoffs will emerge, and you'll see plenty of Barry and the guys breaking it down over on ESPN. Barry Melrose, ESPN's NHL hockey analyst here on 97.3 ESPN. Barry, thanks so much. Always great to catch up, pal.
My pleasure. Anytime. Take care.
You got it. Barry Melrose, everybody here. As he mentioned, the Flyers, he expects them to be active this offseason, which Ron Hextall has kind of said, well, we'll wait and see. Do you think the Flyers will be active this offseason? The Flyers have re-signed defenseman Brandon Manning to a one-year contract.